Been a police officer for over 35 years. Law enforcement's been my life forever. Currently serving as chief of police for a municipality. Retired from a very reputable police department, south side of Chicago. Spent nearly 27 years there. A large portion of that was dedicated to my time serving on a very large, very active, multi-jurisdictional SWAT team. SWAT team, basically, we did the normal SWAT things, if you call it normal, high-risk search warrants, things like that. That was the majority of our work, probably several thousand I was involved in. SWAT team was, at one time, I think 47 communities. Basically, officers from each town came together and formed this multi-jurisdictional SWAT team. I started very early on in the SWAT team. It changed drastically. I served in every role in that team all the way up to the commander. Probably one of the most involved and probably tragic stories, and I have a lot, but this is probably one that really kind of sticks with me and it bothers me. We were called to a burglar alarm in a suburb about 10 minutes outside Chicago. And the suburbs of Chicago are really, right when I started my law enforcement career, they really started getting violent because of crack cocaine and narcotics and things like that. They really started coming south. Drug dealers and narcotic dealers would come to the south suburbs as like a safe refuge. So when they knocked down a lot of the housing projects, Cabrini Green and things like that, a lot of them came out to the south suburbs. So right when I was coming on the SWAT team, we really started getting busy. So this one incident, in hostage, this was a hostage situation. Those are rare. People that are involved in hostage work that is the elite of the elite operations, like Delta Force and FBI as a hostage rescue team. They have different SWAT teams, and the premier level, it's different. It's different than tactical work. These are the operations that are extremely difficult. So we had responded to Dalton. It was an insurance company. They had an alarm there. Now, previously, the police department had responded to this call initially. They went to the agency they went to the business, and nothing was there. The business was locked up. They left. They got a second call, and they went back, and they realized there was a hostage situation. Later on, what we found was a gentleman had come to the building posing to buy insurance. A woman was there by herself, and she had kind of like a life alarm alert, like just a touch alert around her neck. He sits down at her desk. This was really hard to watch. I was not the commander at the time. I was the assistant commander at this time. So he produces a handgun and attempts to rob the business. Gets her up from the table, and a struggle ensues. He has her lock the front door. This was all verified on camera. And she's a bigger lady. A struggle ensues, and what happens is she ends up getting the pistol from him, the handgun, and he ends up getting shot. They struggle in the back room, and it goes off camera. So when she, at some point, she had hit the alarm, and we got there. So we arrive on scene, and we don't know anything else. I was fortunate enough to go to the hostage negotiator school, the FBI hostage negotiator school. A lot of times that wasn't my primary function because I was, serving in a command role, assistant commander. But I was able to go because a lot of times we would have to do that prior to the negotiators getting there. And we had a big negotiating team. We had people that spoke different languages and, men, women, everything like that. So, and that's always a big part of barricaded gunmen or hostage situations and negotiations. And the vast majority of time, it's weight. And, it's one of those things is when you're negotiating with people, it's just about weighting and emotions. And one of the reason time is so important on those is because just like everything else, if they're on drugs, if they're angry, you have a fight with your wife, you get angry, but over time it comes down. And one of the key points is that you let them vent and you listen to them. And they could be yelling and they could be screaming. Now,
Soft-White Underbelly is about giving people a space to tell their stories, even when these stories challenge what we think we know. Ground News shows us different perspectives in the media, which is why Ground News is a perfect sponsor for my channel. In a world where algorithms censor much of the information we receive, some of the most important stories get missed from our news feeds. Ground News highlights local news from around the world, giving you an on-the-ground perspective that national coverage might miss. The app and website empowers you to form your own opinions by presenting you with every article published on any news story worldwide. My favorite part of the app is the data it gives you on each news source as you read it, such as where it leans on the political spectrum, a factuality rating indicating how subjective their printed reporting tends to be, and who funds it. I particularly like their blind spot feed, dedicated to showing you news stories that are underrepresented in the mainstream media. You can check this all out by scanning the QR code on screen or clicking the link below. It's easy to forget how much bias can shape the reality we live in. And in a world where our attention is constantly being fought over, my Vantage plan easily helps me keep up with more important stories slipping through the cracks. So I encourage you to check them out at ground.news/SWU. Subscribe through my link or download the mobile app and enter promo code SWU to save 40% off their Vantage plan. And by subscribing or even gifting it to someone you know, you're helping hold the media accountable and helping my channel directly. Thank you for watching.
Many times when you think about hostage stuff, when people are talking about, I want, and we've had people say this, $50 million, I want a plane, that's good, which is in contrast to this incident when I'm going to talk about. And the reason that's good is because they're talking about the future. They even though if there's no way they're getting out of there, there's parts of them that believe that they are. So that's good that they're having a plan. This was really different. And in retrospect, when I look at this and all the negotiations I've heard and been involved with, he didn't want anything. Now, we didn't know it at the time why, but we did find out. His tone of voice, no demands, very, very odd, very strange looking back on that. We had his father come to the scene. We ended up speaking to him. Very, very rarely would we let a family member speak to anyone on a hostage situation. That's pretty standard protocol. And here's the reason. If I have two brothers or I have a mother and father, you don't know which one I may like or what I don't like. You don't know what my past trauma is. You don't know my relationship. Oftentimes when it's domestic related, marriage, we've had this a lot of times, a breakup. And I know I'm going to talk about another story related to that. They might want the person there when they're on the phone and when they kill somebody or kill themselves. So that's important for intelligence gathering and getting information, but we can't let those people get involved and speak to them. It's not positive. So it seemed I remember the dad saying it was out of character for his son. So we negotiated with him several hours, many times. Again, in one of the incidents I'm going to talk about a little later, we want to talk to the hostage. We always try to see if the hostage taker will let us talk to the hostage. He wouldn't let us do that. So already something seemed odd. No demands, his monotone voice, and his refusal to let us speak to the hostage. So this goes on for many hours. It's a summer day. I want to say June 26th. It's a highly populated area, very busy street. Businesses on both sides, businesses around. So it's pretty complicated to corner that off, to to segregate it and keep people away and safe. We did a good job, but very odd scenario because it was such a busy street. So we have interior and exterior perimeters, officers all around. We have the plainclothes officers on the exterior perimeter, and SWAT guys on the interior perimeter. So after quite a few hours, which generally that's what it takes. People have to be talked into coming out. You have to let them vent. You have to, explain it to them. And it's a lot of different negotiators are needed for different situations. There's cultural aspects. Some Some people may not want to talk to women. Some people may want to talk to women. Maybe they wouldn't mind talking to a woman, but they're involved in a domestic situation. So you have to find that connection and build a rapport. That's a big component of hostage negotiations. So we end up talking to him and coming out and surrendering. And again, that's usually a long process. There's a strict protocol that we have in place. Come out with nothing in your hand, no phone, no gun. And this is the door we want you to come out with. We have a team that's ready. Our assault team would be ready to make entry to the building. And then we would have what we call a react team, which would take that person into custody. So we were going to have him come out one of the main door, a side door. And we had an armored vehicle there. He agrees to come out. And again, like I told you, most people do. They look outside, they see, the Army's there. They're rational. That thing when I talk about, the emotions, high and low, over time, rational thought's going to return, and you try to talk them into handcuffs, make it safe for everybody. So we still don't know what her condition is. We watched the video, some of that was filled in with the gaps from later on from the investigation. So we don't know what her situation is right now. So he says he's going to come out, just like a thousand other times where they come out and they surrender. So he comes to the door, he ends up coming out. And when he says he was gonna, where he says he was gonna, and as he steps out the door, he's on the phone. He had called somebody on his phone. Now, when I was on the SWAT team, when I started, before Columbine, that changed a lot of stuff for SWAT, but we didn't have cell phones either. So we still use it, but we use a hostage rescue phone. We would cut the power to your house, cut your phone lines. We even turn your gas off, especially in the winter, make the environment, uncomfortable. Not all the time. Might not do that with hostages, but if you were in there by yourself. But we'd have a hostage rescue phone, which you could only talk to us. Well, the problem with cell phones is, very difficult to prevent that. So a lot of times they're calling somebody else that may be on the scene. Hey, the police are out there, calling family members. So impossible to prevent that. So he ends up coming out the door and he's got a gun in his hand. And it was very, very unexpected. And there's a presumed compliance is the term for it, where you presuming that they're going to comply with your orders because of the events and the discussions that happened before. And, this was a big learning point. And a lot of officers, hey, this is just like the last one. A lot of SWAT guys, this was like the last one. Well, he came out with the gun, came out with the phone, and he started walking. So the REACT team, which was a team that was supposed to take him into custody, was also the team if they had to have a shot with him, they froze. They did not act. They did not act in time. And now he's walking towards a very busy highway. So the assault team, which was not their primary job, but they had to take it, the team leader and launched them. And they were staged behind a building. They came around and they ended up shooting him. They ended up shooting him 2 times. 2 different officers shot him with the rifle. He drops dead, and he's drops dead, and he's deceased right there on this busy highway. And there was a lot of people out there. Even though they were far back, they're going to hear the gunshots. They're going to see it from a distance. It's just a big open area, and you wouldn't have enough officers to cordon it off as best as you could. So an interesting thing about that was from the time he was shot, we had a couple doctors on the team, a lot of paramedics, firemen, paramedics. Some went to SWAT school, some became police officers. Both doctors at the time were police officers, or surgeons. From the time he got shot until he had a doctor and a medic on top of him was 30 seconds. So the assault team has a shot on him. They then go into the building to do a rescue on her, and they find her deceased in the back room. So we believe that what happened was, after the struggle, that she shot him, wounded him. She wounded him with his own firearm, and he drug her in the back room, and he ended up stabbing and killing her with a letter opener. That one bothers me only because, we don't know. We don't know when that happened. I don't believe it. There's no indication that it happened before we were there, and there's no way we could know. But, when you look at measuring these and you look at measuring success, like I said, thousands of search warrants and a lot of hostage rescues, a lot of barricaded gunmen. But that's a failure. We didn't succeed, and we did have some successes on these. But those are the hard ones, and our guys did everything right. We did everything right. The negotiators did everything right. The REACT team, they probably didn't. Clearly they didn't. They had the shot on that. But the secondary measures and safety measures, they kicked in, and they made sure, because clearly he disobeyed all our commands. He was walking into an area that he didn't know whether it was populated or not. We had it cornered off, but it was still a very busy area, and we can't let him escape. The story does not end there. So shots go off, and the commander and I, Tom Johnson, my very good friend, we walk over to see what's going on with the shooting, get our officers to the hospital. He goes down, he falls, I think he's 113 years old right now, still doing police work. He steps over a guardrail and blows his hip out, and he goes down. So now I take over his command. We send him to the hospital. The two officers go to the hospital because protocol on the shooting. They go to the hospital, and obviously the gentleman, the offender that was shot he went to the hospital. So things calmed down for about 5 minutes. Out of nowhere, a car traveling 100 miles an hour, we can see it coming, driving over curbs, driving over parking bumps, driving around the squad cars. People are yelling at them. We have no idea what's going on. This car, just a plain vehicle. Car parks outside between the exterior perimeter. It got around the uniformed police officers, and now it's in the inner perimeter. The car was to a point where he couldn't drive it anymore. I can't remember if it was disabled or architecturally there was something. A black male gets out with a hat turned around backwards and starts running towards us, towards the scene. He's got his hat turned around backwards. I remember he had something in his left hand, and he had a firearm in his right hand. And he's running full steam towards the scene like a maniac, disobeying commands from SWAT guys. He's got a trail of people tracing him, and he's getting close. He's within maybe 100 yards. And I remember I had my pistol out, and I was thinking, I'm going to have to shoot this guy. And right when I was coming up on him, he's getting a lot closer now. So he's a lot closer now. He's probably 50 yards. He's dodging people, running, and an officer that was on the side of a building speared him and took him down, took him into custody, and in his hand out falls a badge. And what the hell is going on? We found out it was wife. Yeah. His wife was the one that was inside. A lot of the guys were really pissed off at him about that. They were mad. I was mad too. I was mad because we could have shot him. It would have been legal. And it would have been safe, We had a meeting afterwards talking about him arrested and talking about all this. And I remember me and the commander, I can't remember who said it, but what would you have done if it was your wife? And it was the same thing. And I thought, probably more than that. Probably more than that. That one bothers me. And what had happened was he had found out somehow that she was in there. He had no idea that she had passed away. He had no idea that she had gotten killed. No idea that we had killed the offender. He had no idea. And he ended up being a sheriff from the county.
It's a heartbreaking story.
Yeah, that was bad. The agency where it happened at, they're in the news nationwide because of their mayoral situation. And there's some good policemen there, but it's not the best place. And my job as a SWAT commander's assistant commander at the time is tactical operations. I'm not tasked with other duties, but oftentimes that's it happens, and I had to tell that gentleman because it was my guys that shot him, but the incident happened in this town, and I didn't think that was right coming from me. But I'm the one that had to actually tell him that she was dead, and I also had to tell the father, who was on scene, who we had on scene that he had heard it. We had him in the command post, but I also had to tell him as well. So that was that was tough. I had a great career with it. It's only part of my career. It's behind me now, but there's a lot of stuff that happened. I learned a lot. I did everything I wanted to do with that. But I was a patrolman for a long time, and I passed up getting promoted, passed up a lot of things because I wanted to stay on the team. And I got promoted, I don't know, 5 or 6 times, and ended up being the assistant commander in charge of close to 100 guys as a patrolman. I had chiefs on the team at the time that I was in charge of, so it was a big responsibility, and I took it seriously. But it was heavy. I've had some other really heavy incidents like that. That one's bad though. That one was bad because, like I said, I measuring that, the only way to measure if you're successful was if you're saving people's lives, and that one we couldn't, and I get it, we can't do it, all of them, but, and I was on a homicide team for a very, very, very short time after I left. And so that was not my full-time job. None of the guys on the team were full-time assignments. We were what they call a part-time team, but we were so busy that, it was damn near my full-time job. But then I had another full-time job, which was I was in charge of the investigations unit. So all my investigators were on the homicide team. It was the same kind of thing as the SWAT team, a multi-jurisdictional team. You get a homicide, they take 1 or 2 detectives from each agency, and then they go work the homicide and they come back. Same kind of thing. So I didn't get on that until after I'd retired. When I got on it, I didn't like it. One of the things, and when I say this, I'm not trying to devalue life or seem harsh or cruel, but a lot of these homicides are, and again, I value life. This may come off cold, but I'm talking about true victims. I'm talking about people that aren't selling drugs that get shot, people that aren't selling guns that get shot, by gangbangers that get shot by other gangbangers. I'm talking about this woman. This is probably why this one bothers me a lot. Was she's simply at work. She was simply at work. And when you see those are the ones that bother you. If somebody gets shot in the street corner because they're selling drugs, well, there's you have to have some accountability for your actions. You're tied into something where this woman didn't do anything. This poor woman was at work trying to sell insurance, and that was the one that bothered me. The 2 officers that were involved in the shooting, man, they went through a lot, as all the officers that were involved with shootings, and did. It's funny because the next shooting we had on SWAT team was another officer from the same agency that the first officer was from, and his chief was not happy because that ends up being years of lawsuits tied into that, and they don't want that. So, and generally it doesn't happen in your town. So you're giving me an officer, I'm going to another town, I'm doing things there. So, there's some complexity involved with it, with this town and your town and the SWAT team combined together. So there's a lot to it.
What made you want to work in law enforcement?
No law enforcement from my family, none. I don't know, just always drawn to it. And I know I spoke to you before, and I spoke to your assistant about, this is your platform is really good. If you have people, I'm sure people that are interested, and not just law enforcement, but people that are interested in any type of social work, counseling, law enforcement, working in the jails, corrections. If you can't sit here and hear these stories and watch these stories, probably it's not for you. And not only if you can't watch them, because I had somebody say, "Oh man, I love Soft White Underbelly. I love everything they do, but man, some of it is too hard." Well, if you're sitting here watching some of these stories and you're not feeling something and it's not interesting to you, and some of it might make you mad, some might make you empathetic, and you have some empathy, this isn't for you. And in addition to that, you have to realize that not only you're not just talking to these people, you're putting your hands on people, you're arresting them, they're crying on you. I always said I taught criminal justice courses at some colleges and universities for a while. And, I'd have a lot of young college kids come in. I want to do this, I want to do that. And I would start off and say, listen, it's not what you think, you're going to be, searching nasty people that smell terrible, blood and urine. And I mean, all that stuff, some of the worst smell. I have a really bad strong sense of smell, which is terrible. Some of the worst things I've ever smelled in my life, besides dead bodies, are humans, just people not washing themselves, So if that's not something that you're going to be okay with, it's not for you. And I think this platform, your platform, does a good job. And I think what a lot of your platform stands for, that's what interests me, some of the things I talked about. I didn't want a 9-to-5. So my parents didn't want me in law enforcement. They didn't want me to join the military. I joined the military. I wanted to get some college paid for. So I was in the Illinois Army National Guard, U.S. Army, Illinois Army National Guard. Did that for 6 years. I didn't have a good career in military. It was kind of boring. I didn't get to do anything. But what it did do for me, going to the Army's basic training and the schools and stuff like that, it boosted my confidence. So gave me money for college. Ended up between the military and law enforcement, the agency I worked for, I ended up getting three degrees. So it worked out. Didn't have to pay for them. But the interest came from, so I went to the military and I got out. And I started when I was 20, like right when I was 20, I started, and I retired from my first police department when I was 50. I think law enforcement is a very noble profession. When I started, it was still more respected than it is now. It's not easy. My wife's a fairly new police officer at 50. She's doing a great job. I'm so impressed with her, being positive, empathetic, but still firm. I think law enforcement's not for everybody. It's highly challenging. It's interesting. They say it's the front row seat to the greatest show on earth, and it sure is. I've had, everything from witnessing an exorcism in a parking lot to a lot of deaths and a lot of interesting stories. It's never the same. It's never the same day twice. It's definitely challenging, even more so now. A lot of people are, they think they know their rights and they don't. And what I see nowadays is people just are not. They think they're not accountable for their actions. But I also believe that law enforcement officers are more, obviously they require more training. They need to be empathetic. They need to be understanding, but they also have to do their job. There's standards. Everyone wants a break. Everyone thinks that they deserve a break. But at what point can you not give people a break? I mean, people are very surprised when they get arrested. And, again, think about this. If you call the fire department and they save your house, you're never calling law enforcement during a good situation. You're never doing that. It's probably your worst day. Even if the police officers make an arrest, they arrest, your spouse for battery, or they recover your stolen property, or arrest somebody that, killed somebody, broken out. That you're still a victim. So at the very best, you may do a good job. They may be, grateful and maybe even receive recognition. The event still happened. You're not erasing that event. So I think with law enforcement now is it's just lack of understanding, lack of training. You really can't mandate the public. You can't mandate common sense. I think law enforcement just has to be better. I just watched a video. It made me think about this. I think it was in LA County. I think it was in California. A girl had looked like she was dealing with a homeless veteran. He didn't have a weapon or anything, and he was making threats verbally, and she was backing up. She ends up pulling her gun out and shooting him. Don't think that's legal. One of the things that brought to my, and again, I don't know, some of this is speculation, but it brought some thoughts to my mind about that, about training. I graduated from Chicago Police Academy, and the defensive tactics, the fighting control tactics, they were big on that. We had Mr. T's brother in the class. He was a Chicago policeman, and he worked out. Anyone that sees this knows who he is, T-Row. All he did was work out. You'd be in class, you'd walk by, he'd be in the gym working out. He would work the recruits out, and if he was off, he'd be in the gym working out. That's all he did every day. He was a monster of a human. So at the end of basically your final in this component of the police academy, you had to fight this guy. And I remember, and you would see other recruits, and everyone fought the same people. They didn't say, hey, you 110-pound female, you fight 100. No, they were very good about that. I don't know how it is now, but they were really good about the defensive tactics stuff. Nowadays, they don't do that. They're not as tough. The police academy they're just not. My wife went to the one she went to, Cook County Sheriff's Academy. They seem like they do a very good job with their stuff. I don't know how Chicago is now. There's quite a few of them in our state in Illinois. The problem with that is this. There's some societal stuff tied in that. So society doesn't want us to fight. You can't, you're not ever, nobody's allowed to fight, ever on school grounds. You can't settle things, men fight and they settle things and they're done. And if you think about a lot of things, how things fester with school shootings and stuff like this, I think that's a part of it. Things are going unresolved. Kids aren't playing enough contact sports anymore. So everything is watered down. So if you think about society, we're watered down, we gotta be better. We can't fight. We can't put hands on people. Now there are probably more people doing jujitsu, but people aren't boxing. People aren't, and that's not for everybody, but the contact sports and the physical confrontations and stuff, it doesn't exist. So then you get hired as a police officer. And then you don't have any physical, the physical training. I just had someone that went to a police academy, neither one of the ones I spoke of, but another one. They did none of this. So think about a young girl that's hired from she didn't grow up in a city. She's never been around conflict. She's never been in a fight. She hasn't played any contact sports, okay? Then she goes to the police academy and it's all academic. This is what I believe has happened with this situation. Again, some of this is assumption on my part. But then she's put into a situation where she has to act physically. Well, even if you're punched in the face, being punched is not deadly force. But if you've never had that, if you've never been punched, what are you going to do? Oh my God, I got punched. Is this deadly force? No. So the experience is not there. You haven't had that happen to you. So because you haven't had that experience, the pathways in your brain, they don't know where to go. And are you going to go right for your gun? Again, I don't know if that's what happened here, but that clearly it clearly didn't appear to be use of deadly force. So not only do I believe being a police officer is so much tougher nowadays because there's so many new mandates. There's mandates all the time. We have to do this. We have to do this. And those mandates are great. but it makes it so difficult. Throughout the U.S., there's a recruiting crisis. I mean, by me, man, if you have your police certification, you're going to get offered a job somewhere. When I started, I remember Chicago Police Academy, they had 13,000 applicants for the 1 year to be police officers. I had a police chief tell me their starting salary was close to $100,000. They didn't get one applicant. So the more prestigious agencies that are paying, really good salaries, they have their picks. But even then, it's not easy because, officers are now looking at shifts. Oh, I don't like that shift. I'm going to go over here. It's close to being the same money. A lot of people don't know, and it's different in every state. So people are going to see this, and officers in California are going to say, "Oh, that's not that much money," and then officers in Tennessee are going to say, "That's ridiculous." By us, I mean pretty much the first-year officer, you're not going to make under $100,000 either. And I know officers have made $200,000 and $300,000 because of overtime. So it's a good profession. I was able, the law changed now, but I was able to leave and retire at 50 and go get another job. So the financial benefits are good, and I have medical insurance for life. So the benefits also there were very attractive to me. The agency I went to was very reputable. They sent me to so many different schools. They let me stay on the SWAT team. They let me, go to college, and they paid for it. So I had a really good career there.
What are some of the things the public gets wrong about law enforcement?
Well, I mean, a lot of times we're just not there. I think people think that we're just driving around, fucking with people. And it's like, a lot of times we get calls. There's a reason we're there. Yeah, there is proactive enforcement. Most cops are out doing that, and that does lead to a lot of good, cases and good arrests and things like that. But many times you're getting a call. Many times you're getting a call on something, and you're responding there, and then you have to take action. I'll tell you, I think the biggest thing is that I think people just don't realize that, police officers are human. If you treat people with respect, I arrested a lot of people. And, one of the things that I learned was tell people the why. And, we hear this in business already. Explain the why. And even if I'm arresting somebody and I explain something, driver's license or whatever, something stupid, whatever it is, even if it was something bigger, this is what's going to happen. A lot of times people are fearful of, they don't know, they don't know, even if they do know why, you tell them why, and then you tell them the procedure. Hey, listen, we're going to go to the police station. You're going to be there about a half hour. I got to do some paperwork, and then you're going to be out of here. You don't need no money. However, I got to tow your car or whatever it is. Explaining the procedure to them. I think the biggest thing is that they're human, that we have good days and we have bad days. The other thing is, you'll see, they're all corrupt. They're all corrupt, and the social media is just ridiculous. They somebody says one thing. I just had something recently where I had for no reason, I had a woman completely falsely accuse one of my officers of making advances towards her, harassing her, falsely writing her citations. Turned out to be all false. My recommendation to him was that this was all online. She called him by name. I said, you need to file a defamation suit. He called an attorney. The attorney ended up contacting her, sending a letter. She sent us a letter. She recanted everything, admitted that she was lying, and I posted it online. I posted it on our page. You're not gonna make false allegations. People think that there's no accountability for that, and I'm not, as the chief of police, I'm not going to allow that of my officers. I try to hold them to high standards, but I'm going to treat everyone fairly and honestly and try to be professional. But people do things for just odd reasons, and there's not always you're not always going to understand why.
Are there things that the cops get wrong about the public?
Yeah. I think you have to have some, I think there has to be more empathy. You can still do your job and be professional. Yeah. I had a story where I had a guy, and I arrested him on something, driver's license or warrant, or it was something. And he was really pissed off. And he was motherfucking me up and down. And, you know, I started on him, and we got to the station, and I said, hey, listen, you know what? I don't care who treated you wrong or whatever, whoever hurt your feelings, whatever happened. I said, I'm not going to do that. And he was, you know, you arrest somebody, they're going to say everything. They're going to talk about your mom, your kids. They're going to kill everybody. They're going to talk about the size of your feet, your nose, you know, your skin color, you know, everything, your sexual orientation, all of it. You got to hear it every day. So he continued on. I just processed him, and that was it. And he goes to leave, and he apologized to me. He said, hey, man, I know you were just doing your job. I know you were just doing your job, and I'm sorry, but I had some bad interactions with the police. I think as a police officer, you can't treat everyone like they're the and I know that some of the law enforcement that's watching us, we all work with that guy that they want to treat everyone like, you know, they're a serial killer or the worst gangbanger ever. You can't do that. You know, you got to start treating people with respect. You got to be professional, especially nowadays with body cameras. You know, it's extremely important to be professional, and it's difficult. Absolutely, it's difficult. You know, and the biggest thing about police officers is their ego. They get their ego hurt, and they get pulled in. And you know, I got a saying. It's don't get got. Don't get got, because, you know, you're on camera. That's your camera, and they're just going to bait you into it. And they all do it. And if you know, there's bad dentists, there's bad doctors, there's bad garbage men, there's bad policemen too.
Are those cameras that the cops carry to record everything?
Oh yeah.
Are they good?
Yeah, they're high. Yeah, and you know, you can't erase them. You know, you can't erase them. They're you know, they're in the cloud. You can't erase them. I mean, it's there.
Keeps
you know,
everybody honest.
it's evidence. You can't, you know, and if you did erase it, you can't.
Keeps
There's
everybody
just no way.
honest.
So it's there, you know, and you're going to see now. There's a flip side to that, you know, when all the stuff about the body worn cameras came out. There's another side to this that a lot of people don't think. So what if I know somebody and that person's never had an issue, maybe had a couple too many drinks, I pull them over. It's very difficult for me to give them a break, because the next 2 people or 3 people that I don't pull over and I don't give them a break, and now it comes into question on why I gave somebody a break and somebody else. So you're seeing now that you know, when I was coming up, when I was still on the street, discretion, you know, I had the discretion to do that. And we still have it to some extent, but you're seeing less police officers exercise that discretion because they're fearful that something might be called into play. And then, you know, why'd you give this person a break and not this person? They were both supposed to be under the influence of alcohol. They were both still, you know, whatever that issue is. So it's not easy. So there's good and bad with it. Overall, I think it's tremendous, because I think, you know, what I find funny is that, like, I didn't have body cameras. The guys that did not have body cameras that are out there, you're not seeing those are the ones with the problem. And this is one of those things that doesn't make sense. You're seeing the people that have body cameras. So if you're a new police officer and you grew up and you went and you had training and everything you know is on camera, you would think it'd be a higher level. You know, that they would never have issues. They would never be saying stupid things on tape that would come back and hurt them or hurt the case, get them sued, whatever it is. But that's not the case, and I don't know why. I don't know. If you know you're on tape, I mean, why would you be doing unlawful, illegal, unethical, saying stupid things? Emotions, that's what it is. You know, you got to be emotional intelligence. You got to be resilient emotionally and be able to walk away from stuff and be professional. And it's hard to do when you're in these situations. It's often very, very difficult because of a lot of different things, you know.
You've worked in some rough areas and dealt with extreme situations. Has there ever been a time where you questioned your faith in humanity?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I can tell you that, you know, so the meat and butter of a lot of SWAT teams are just narcotics, you know. A lot of narcotics search warrants, and things have changed a little bit. Because when I was on, it was the old, break the door down, the SWAT team goes in, middle of the night. And when we started off, we were pretty rough, but over time we got pretty good. We got very good. A lot of intelligence gathering. I remember I started saying that we need to go out and start looking at these houses before. From that, advanced planning, and you got to remember this is 30 years ago. A lot of advanced planning and look at human behavior. I'm a big student of human behavior, human performance, and things like that. And those are important to be successful in narcotics raids. But to answer your question about humanity, I can tell you the vast number of narcotic search warrants had kids there, had children there. And having kids myself, it blew my mind. Why, you have your drug operation, I get it, but then your kids are there. So they were trying to live this dual life, where the kids are going to school and they're coming home, and then they're selling drugs and guns there, and the guns are laid out, the kids are there. It was ridiculous. So seeing the conditions that a lot of people live in and see the conditions, and this was not just one time, this was time and time and time again, and it was like very very disturbing, because you wonder what are they that environment, what are they being taught? I'll tell you, my experience, again, don't kill me on the comments, guys. My experience is the majority of people that I saw. We did operate on the federal level sometimes. We worked with the DEA and Secret Service and ATF and stuff like that with different operations. But generally, we were working with local law enforcement agencies, narcotics teams, or their detectives. And I can tell you that the majority of search warrants that I did narcotics-wise that I was involved with, they probably would have made more money working at McDonald's. It was the weirdest thing to me. I think about Michael Vick. You might remember Michael Vick with the pit bulls. Mm-hmm. He had no reason to do that. Successful, famous, all this money. Why was he fighting dogs? And this is my thought on it. Can't get out of the hood. Can't get out of the hood. Even when somebody's successful, why are they not out of there? Because to me, they may drive a nice car. They may appear that they have money, but they're living, and I get that they may be part of their operation. But from what I've seen, none of them are making, the stereotype, the Scarface, and they almost always had Scarface posters. That was a big joke. Always, you got to have the Scarface poster, but they weren't living Scarface. They were barely getting by. And when you think about narcotic sales, I always say this: if you're selling hamburgers or you're selling narcotics, guess what you have to have? Either one. It's a business. You have a business, okay? You need transportation. You need inventory. You need to market it. You need to sell it. You need to store it. You need to allow customers access. Well, if you're selling hamburgers or cars, none of that stuff's going to get you arrested. But with narcotics, every step of that poses the potential for an arrest. And that's you could be as careful as you could be the most under the radar, careful, unassuming drug dealer ever. It doesn't matter. You still have to sell your drugs. You still have to get them there. You still have to store them. You still have to package them. All that stuff. And the vast majority of how people get caught with narcotics is somebody else, usually a friend or somebody that bought drugs from them, they get caught with drugs or something else, and they say, oh, by the way, and their friend gives them up. I cannot tell you how many times that we had narcotic sales, we had an informant, we got a search warrant, and you never tell the informant when you're going to do it. And we go there, and guess the informant's there. Not by design either. We didn't tell them to be there, and guess what? So no honor among thieves, right? And that's I'm telling you that people, I'm careful, I'll never get caught, I'll never get caught. Well, they'll get caught. The ones I dealt with, a couple, I can tell you a couple of them, in my opinion, were smart, still got caught, and then one of the things that they never factor into it is the human stuff. They don't. And this was something that I recognized. We started taking this into account for during our planning and operations, where you park your car. A lot of areas I was in, which I'm guessing a lot of people, they deal with, like, this is one example. Steel gates on your front door. Nobody's going to be able to get in on my steel gate. Well, there's a thing called Grandma's door theory. Grandma's door theory, and this is something I taught in SWAT school. We had our own SWAT school. I created it and wrote it. It was the longest one in Illinois history at the time. I don't know if it is now, but we got pretty good with we were doing a lot of operations. I felt pretty confident. I didn't like the schools. Not that they weren't good. I just wanted to put our focus on it. So I developed this school, and then I had external people teach, but it was majority our guys, and it would be all kinds of different stuff. So some of this was part of the intelligence gathering and scouting for operations. So Grandma's door theory was, this is why detectives in SWAT and tactical are different. Detectives are looking at getting in there and getting the drugs. Well, there's a saying from a guy, Steve Imes, famous Springfield police officer, about if you can't get in, you might as well stay home. He had this thing called the 12-second rule, and which is true. I'm telling you, 12-second rules. If he 1,000 search warrants, Springfield, Missouri. He did a study, and what it came out was within 12 seconds, by the time you get on a search warrant, they're going to know you're there. So you have 12 seconds from the time you get on scene to get in the house. So one of the things, so your intelligence is important to cut that down. It was 12 seconds between they know they were there and they could react. That's quick. You're not going to announce. Your knocking and announce has to be longer than that, unless you have a no-knock search warrant. So you're knocking the door. Police search warrant. We have search warrants, search the house, that kind of stuff. So I started looking at more ingenious ways, like how can we get more intelligence? How can we be better at this? And some of that came from looking at, like, daily habits. What are they doing? How are they doing it? So Grandma's door theory is looking at the structure of the houses and determining and identifying what's the best entry point. So Grandma's door theory is architecturally, if the front of the house is facing the street, most people are going to assume that's the entry point, which it could be. All right, but it's not what we call the common entry point, the CEP. All right, what door are you using every day? That's the door that we want to know. So how do we determine that? So if we looked at the front door and regular door, but we saw that they were coming out the side door, and even if the side door had a steel security door and it looked like it was more difficult because of that steel security door, we would go through the steel security door, and here's why. What do we know? We know that door opens and closes, that people can come in and out. And the reason it's called Grandma's door theory, because if your grandmother or your uncle or somebody ever had a door, like if somebody knocked, you were at their house and somebody came to that door, you knew that was not somebody that knew the family, that it must have been a salesman or somebody that was never there. It's not a common door. Many times with situations like that, because they don't use the door, they might provide some extra some type of barricade, or they might put an armoire in front of it and everything. So those things were really important. The other thing, the human factor of it is, especially when they're living with family members, okay, not everyone's going to lock that door. Okay, not everyone's going to do it. They're not going to do it. I've seen them where there's 10 locks on the door and not one's locked. It's the importance of also coming at the right time. Determining what is the right time to knock the door down. Just like us, we go in to go to bed at night. We forget our phone cord. Fuck, I got to go and get my phone. Come back in. I'm not going to lock the door. So that was identifying things like that. Why are drug dealers drug dealers? This is almost always related to narcotic sales, because they don't want to go to work. So now, is that a factor? It is a factor for consideration, but it's not the only factor, but it's definitely a factor. Where's the mail? You look at the front steps, there's snow or there's leaves there. Nobody's walking through there, but you see there's a path there. You do some surveillance, you see where their cars are parked. They're lazy. If they're not going to the front door, they're going to the side door. Most of the cars are going to be parked, again, structurally, architecturally, near the side door. So you look at things like that. So there's a lot of different things that people look at to be successful in these, because the whole goal is to get in there and isolate everybody, secure the situation. For hostage rescue, you're in there. This is hostage rescue is very different, because we talked about that. When you're going in, like, those negotiations are over, and this was a lot of training too. You're not going in there to talk anymore. You're going in there to drop your hammer. I mean, very, very. It's a minute second. You're not going in there and having debates on it with people. You're not going in there, please surrender. Those times are over. They've had all those opportunities. So that's a different mindset that officers also have to train for. And SWAT was not something that everyone's cut out for. It's not. I interviewed hundreds of people for the team, a lot of good policemen. Myself, I wouldn't be a good accident reconstructionist. I don't think I would be, I've done hostage negotiation. It's not something I want to do. I don't want to investigate child pornography. And there was a lot of people that thought they would be good SWAT officers, and they weren't, for whatever reason, physically, mentally. We put through people some pretty rigorous training. It's just not for everybody. It's not. And
what kind of qualities does a person need to do that?
Well, everyone would think, I would say being physically fit. I would say probably the most, be able to be part of a team, accept criticism. That is, we had a saying, leave your fear and feelings at the door, because both will be tested. Because, it was a pretty harsh environment, but that's what you want. You don't want to do that. It'd be nice if they could shoot. We could teach people how to shoot, but people that came in. A lot of military guys did well in the SWAT team. The problem was, because it was a team where and everyone had different duties when they went back. Like, when I was on there, I was a patrolman, I was a tactical officer, I was a sergeant, and then I was a detective sergeant. I was in charge of investigation. So throughout my career, my duties changed on both teams, and I had to go back. What happens a lot is people can't transition with this, and we were definitely busy enough where we probably could have been a full-time team. We probably should have been. But we were supported by Homeland Security. We had a lot of good support for Cook County Department of Homeland Security. We got a lot of good training and resources from them, but mostly it's probably be able to operate in a team environment and your physical fitness. That's it, because that stuff on your wearing that gear over time. And I had a lot of guys that went on to be very good policemen and successful investigators. It's just like everything else. It's not for everyone, but man, a lot of guys really thought it was their calling, and safety was another big thing. God, so many guys had safety issues, and we just weren't going to have that, So we had some pretty high standards. So
I'm sure you got some other interesting stories too.
I got a lot of interesting stories.
Love to hear a couple more.
All right. Probably another one that I had, which was also, again, talk about successes and failures. It was a failure. Another failure was it was a big snowstorm, coincidentally in the same town. This is the last one I spoke about. This one, guy gets caught cheating on the wife. The wife puts him out. So divorce, relationship things are always touchy. They're delicate. Somebody robbing a bank is different than this. There's no emotion there, Somebody robbing a bank, nobody robs a bank and says, okay, we're going to get caught inside by the cops. What do we do? So it's a surprise. But this is this situation, and husband is put out by the wife. She wants a divorce. He decides he's going to come back. Comes back. He's, for whatever reason, I guess she was serious, had caught him cheating multiple times. And she comes back. He comes to the house early morning. I remember it was snowing, a lot of snow. And shoots at her, shoots at the kids, shoots at, I think it was her sister. Everyone escapes. He takes the wife hostage in the house. We get there. We start negotiating with him. And again, negotiations, what happens? Again, up and down. I'm going to kill her. I'm going to kill myself. And over time, rational thought continues. That's what we want. Drugs were off. Time heals everything, right? And it's just persistent, giving them a little bit of space, but, and you don't start off with right away. I mean, I had it where people wanted to come out and we wouldn't let them come out because we didn't have everyone there. We didn't have the situation set up. Now, if it was a hostage situation and they wanted to come out or release hostage, we would figure it out. But if they're by themselves, sometimes we'd make them wait because we want to do it in a controlled and safe environment. And again, that can presume compliance. Again, I talked about that. So he's talking to us and he's pissed off, and eventually some rational thought starts returning, and we continue talking to him. I think I don't know what I was. I was team leader at this time, but I was in a command post. He starts talking about surrendering. You're right. You're right. I say, hey, nobody got hurt. The kids are all fine. You start talking about the positives. You explain to them, hey, listen, this isn't that serious. We're in Cook County. Nobody's going to jail. You didn't hit anybody. You didn't even hit any cars. Okay. So he's going to come out. Let me go to the bathroom. I say, hey, can I talk to her? Can I talk to her? Yeah, let me talk to her. So she gets on the phone, and she was angry. And she had no fear. And she was motherfucking him. Coming, and I could hear her, I forgot to add this part. I could hear her in the background the whole time we were talking to her. I was talking to her, and then I think at the end, one of our other negotiators was talking to him. But I could hear it through our phone. Come in here and shoot this motherfucker. Come kill him. He ain't gonna do shit. That's
the hostage speaking.
That's the hostage. He ain't gonna do shit. Steady running her mouth. I'm like, holy shit. So I'm like, hey, she's okay. Yeah, she's okay. And he's kind of talking shit about her a little bit. But she was bad. She was really, he did this, he did that. It was a lot. So just let me talk to her. And basically, we get on the phone with her, and it's shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. Let us work this. So we get back with him, and he'd already started coming down, right? He had started coming down, and so we start talking to him again, and we get her off the phone. We tell her to basically shut her mouth, and we're going to get her out of there, and blah blah blah. The kids are okay and all that, and still running her mouth. So he wanted to go to the bathroom. It's like, let me go to the bathroom. I'm going to come out. He had talked to her. He then said, I'll come out. So he gets back on the phone. He said, hold on. And she's continuing running her mouth and yelling and screaming. Upset, rightfully so. Gets back on the phone. He says, hold on a minute. Puts his phone down, and immediately we hear 2 gunshots. So we had been set up on the basement. The basement had basement block windows. And as soon as the gunshots went, our guys knew. We broke all the windows out, and I got some guns in there. And she was chained up to a pool table, and she had been chained up to a pool table. She had a handcuff on her wrist or some type of strap. I don't remember what it was. And he shot her. We don't know what happened, if she tried to escape or whatever. But he went. So we went in there, and they're both dead, just like that. That one was another one where that was kind of textbook negotiations where they're up here, they're down, and then it continues. And then he said he was going to come out, and I honestly believe he was going to come out. The inflection in his voice, the words he chose. We were talking about where when you get to the point of where and how you're going to allow them to surrender, and then they said, well, what would I be charged with? Oh man, nobody got hurt. Nothing, man. Talk them into handcuffs. That's what we want to do. He was going to come out, and she, don't know why, but she whatever she did, she caused him to react and end up killing both him and her. So
It's got to be terribly stressful.
that was heavy. Yeah, that was another.
Got to be a stressful job.
Yeah, that was another one where I would say it was a failure. Obviously a failure, but I'll tell you about a success. We got called to another town. I was a team leader on this one. This was, when I start telling this story, I say I was at my son's 8th birthday party. It was a Halloween party, and to be funny, I was dressed as Britney Spears. So I actually responded to this call out with under my SWAT uniform. I had to change out. So we get there, and it's a guy that had taken his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend, and her brother hostage, and he had escaped, and he held her. He was under the assumption that we were never able to confirm this, but he believed the mob was going to kill him. Believed the mob was going to kill him. There was something painted on his garage, some symbol that he believed that this what it was. He was an older white Italian guy. And for whatever reason, he believed that. He believed he was targeted for the mob. Now, later on, we found out his history was such that he probably was the guy for the mob that went in and pointed him out, and then the hitman came in and did this. This was in Chicago. So that's what we believe. We don't know for sure. So for whatever reason, he believed that this was going to happen. Wouldn't negotiate with us. He was shooting at us. SWAT team was on the other side of the assault team. Again, I was there. The assault team was on the other side of the street, and he was shooting at us. We had our snipers are probably our best asset. We can stay far back. They can get intel. They're not just shooting people. We had some really high quality snipers. We had a couple sniper shots, shootings at people. So he was said he was going to kill her. He was going to kill himself. Remember, the house sat up higher than where we were. It was almost like on a hill, and so we're trying to negotiate with him. He won't talk to us. That was a sign. Goes on for, I don't know, 10 hours maybe. Get there in the afternoon. It's late in the evening. Snipers are this small houses on both sides. The sniper who ended up being involved with the shooting I found another location for him, and he moved there. Got into a different spot. So we had a lot of snipers in this one, probably 8 or 10 or something. We had a lot. I don't know what the number was, but there was more than normal. So again, hostage rescue is very difficult because you got to get in the house. You got to neutralize the threat. So you want to do everything you can. It's unless they start doing something overtly, you're gonna do everything you can to take your time, and it's very difficult. Again, there's people dedicate their whole life to this hostage rescue team, Delta Force. That's all they do because you're coming in a room and you're shooting as soon as you see the person, So, there's a whole thing just getting in. I talked about that. How are you going to get in? And right before I left, we started doing explosives. I went to the explosive school. They're doing a lot more explosives now. That's going to give you a lot more resources and avenues to make entries. So, what ends up happening is suddenly he had shot us a couple times. Nobody's hurt. He doesn't know where we're at. We're right across the street and doesn't even know we're there. He comes out. Just comes out of the front door. Just the door busts open, and he's got a handgun to her head, and he starts counting. Now the assault team is nowhere near her. That's not our job. We're behind a building, And, if an emergency assault has to happen, we go. We come around the corner and go. We want to be out of sight. We don't want him to see us, He'd shot at our armored vehicle a couple times. We had a light truck and made us get that out of there. He'd shot at that a couple times. So he comes out and he, typical gun to the head type thing with this woman, his ex-girlfriend, starts counting down, 10, 9, 8. And so the protocol on this is, it's not like you see in the movies. Do I have a green light? It's not what it is. It's, what they kind of call a Delta order. A lot of places call it Delta order. It's like, what are you going to do? You're not calling somebody to get authorization to shot. So if one of the snipers has a shot on it, we know that, okay, somebody has to take the shot because he's counting down. And we're right across the street. The goal is when that shot cracks, that we're coming around the corner. No matter what happens, we're coming around the corner and dealing with that problem. So shot goes off. Bam. Come around the corner. And again, the house, the steps, and it was up on an incline. And I remember just out of the corner of my eyes, I saw like a little flash. And we get to the bottom of the steps, front yard, and I remember the team kind of stalled. I had to push them forward because there was nothing there. We didn't see anything, thinking he's going to be dead on the porch, and she's going to be, oh my God, holding her head. It was a small wooden porch. Nothing. Worst feeling ever. And everyone kind of, just for a split second, we're like, whoa, push him forward because we don't know if he's dead now inside, she's dead inside, both of them. Did he retreat with the hostage inside? We don't know what happened. So as we come up the stairs, he's right there. And when he was right when the shot went off, he was saying, fuck you. And he's shooting, fuck you. So, that basically a sniper shot's going to be different. Hitting somebody with that big round, you're going to, it's like an off button. Most people, non-law enforcement, non-military, they think people get shot and they're dead right there. It's not. With this, the cranial vault, the triangle of death, you're turning them off. You're turning them off, like that's what you want. In that scenario, you want them dead right there. So he was saying, fuck you. And if you ever heard the story, pry the gun from my cold dead hand. So we came in, the team pushed past him. I was right there and I went to him. I stepped on his hand. I looked, his hand's still on the trigger, and the on his face, he's doing the F. He's like, I could see the F. He was frozen in time. He was frozen in time. He still had his finger on the trigger. I had to rip the handgun out of his hand because he's still. It was like somebody just turned him off, paused him. The flash that we saw was her. Now think about this. This is, again, I told you I'm a student of human behavior, human performance. She'd been held hostage, beat, raped. He was burning her with cigarettes. I remember that. Her boyfriend's head gets blown off right next to her. And before the trained SWAT team can come across the street in seconds, she's able to come down and run. And later on, we find out the guy, more junior officers, what would happen is the new guys would be on the outside. And as they, more training and experience, they would gradually move up and be on the entry team, the premier spot. He said he couldn't even move fast enough. She was so scared. She ran right, fight or flight, ran right past him. So, so that was a success. That was a success. But that was probably one of our first big operations, and it kind of really set us up to be successful on the team. It did a lot for us. It gave us a lot of confidence. We ended up investing more money in our SWAT team or in our sniper unit, and actually we had another sniper shooting later on, kind of the same thing. But when he got hit with that, the entry room was nothing, nothing. You could barely see it. Now the piece over here, it was like a puzzle piece that you could, all that trauma occurs in your brain. It doesn't occur outside. It doesn't. It'll come out, but it's scrambling your brain is what it's doing. So, But yeah, definitely some interesting times. We had another sniper shooting where, again, people do things for strange, odd reasons. You know, he got mad over a solar sign being handed out by a fireman. He pulled a gun on him. Now later on, we had found out that he was kind of like a survivalist, like a one of them. But it was in the middle of a neighborhood. So the chief, who was real good friends with, he ended up retiring from a big PD just north of Chicago, and he was at this smaller PD as a chief. Didn't even know he was on a SWAT team. They called me, and I came here. Him and I became fast friends after that. He ended up at like 62 years old. He wanted to go through SWAT school. He learned all about. He had a great law enforcement career. He just didn't know a lot about SWAT, and ended up serving on the executive board, which was a board of chiefs that I answered to from the SWAT team. So he was happy to see us. And this is a lot of times. This is just out of the wheelhouse of a lot of cops and chiefs and village managers, mayors, whatever it is. So a lot of times our job was to educate them on that stuff. So we got there and
cue the sirens.
What's that? Cue
the sirens.
Yeah. So we get there and same thing. He's mad. He's shooting. He's upset. He was a different kind of guy. Him and his wife were both actively involved in this standoff thing. They had tear gas masks on. They had, he was talking about having improvised explosives, and he had rifles. After the incident happened, we had found he had gone to all these different stations. He had weapons here, he had weapons here, he had weapons here, he had weapons here, and he had all these different stations of weapons. All this over a fireman dropping off a free solar sign. The village had bought solar address signs. That's what it was, a solar address sign. And later on, we found out that, neighbors said he would be mowing his lawn with guns on and stuff, just kind of weird. So he had ended up, wouldn't come out, refused to cooperate with us, refused to even, very little communication, dared us to come in a couple times. So I can't remember what precipitated the actual event, but he ends up shooting at our armored vehicle. Hits the windshield, obviously doesn't do anything. Took a couple shots, and our sniper, I'll tell you, the guy, I was one of the better shots on my police department. I wasn't even close to these guys on the SWAT team. They're like non-human shooters, just like unbelievable. I remember going against a guy doing some target shooting at some steel plates, and he was shooting his gun upside down better than I could shoot my gun regular. It was amazing shot. So this guy what happened is, I don't think he had a military training, the offender, but he was back in the window of the house shooting with a rifle. We knew he was shooting with a rifle. And while he's shooting, the sniper says, we took a shot at him. We're wondering like, hey man, when is somebody gonna take a shot at this guy? But they can't see him, right? So what I found out later, he told me, I'm like, did you ever see him? He's like, no, I never saw him. I'm like, well, how did you shoot him? He goes, I saw the flash. He goes, we knew he was shooting a rifle. So, I calculated the flash, the rifle's this long, and then, I figured that's where he was. So when he's shooting the rifle, shot actually went through him side by side. So he shot one time. We didn't know this, but he's dead. We end up ripping the front of his house off. We're not going to go in. It's not a hostage situation. We're not going to go in. The wife was there willingly. We end up ripping the front of the house off. I think we got the wife out right before he shot. Yeah, that's right. We end up taking our armored vehicle, and it was a wooden frame house, and we ripped the entire front of the structure off. We end up, he's laying there. We don't know if he's playing possum. We end up shooting him with a couple kinetic rounds, see if he would move or not. He didn't, and we end up realizing he was shot. We went and he was dead. Interesting thing about that was he had been, when he was shot and we got him in the front yard, he looked really gray, even though he'd only been shot, like a short time. And I remember talking to one of the paramedics or the doctor or somebody. I said, man, he looks like he's been dead a long time. He's like, well, yeah, it's because he got hit. I mean, he'd been dead a little while before we got him out. We didn't get him out immediately. But I said, man, but that round hitting him did so much damage that it just accelerated the death process. It was unbelievable. We get him out. We got him laid in the front yard. And I'm standing there with the team leader at the time. We come over there, and he finds a gun in his back pocket, turned upside down, a small, like a 32 Tomcat or something small. And when he starts to pull it out, he goes, what is that? And he sees the 550 cord wrapped around the trigger, and they wrapped around the trigger. And he starts pulling it out, and he stops. He's like, what the hell? And what happened was he had booby-trapped his own body. The pistol was upside down. It went down through his leg, up through his pocket to his belt. So when you try to pull that gun out, it would go off. So he booby-trapped his own body. Went inside, he had all kinds of survivalist stuff. Never really found out what that was about. He was kind of just like it was weird. You would think he'd be a guy that'd be living on a isolated ranch or something like that, but it was the middle of a neighborhood, and he just snapped like that. I remember they thought there was a bunch of explosives in his house. We had called the bomb squad out, and they had to detonate it. It turned out it wasn't. It was a bunch of a coin collection. It was just the way he had it. But he was saying he had bombs too. But he had we had tried to gas him out. We had done all, standard protocol on that, breaking stuff, putting gas in there, but he had gas masks on. When you see that, you're going to get some resistance. You're not going to have people come out. So talk about some of the stuff with SWAT school. It's important.
Sure.
This is also why what I'm going to talk about is also why I don't like concealed carry. I think it's people that, not that I'm against it. I'm not against it. What I'm saying is that people that in Illinois concealed carry, at least I believe so, 16 hours. It's the most, it's the longest training to carry a firearm, and they're probably going to be getting rid of it, and a lot of states are. Well, what I'm going to talk about here is a class that we did. We called the Psychology of Violent Encounters class, and this is why I don't think that people that train with firearms don't understand. There's more involved to it. This is why I went and got the certification. I thought I was going to love teaching it. Oh God, no, I hate it. People that train with firearms don't realize that when you go to the range and shoot, that has nothing to do with what you're going to deal with. That is not the event. You're never going to present it with a target. It's a human being. Okay? It's never going to be probably a guy holding a gun with a bag of money with the money sign. It's never going to be that. And we develop what we call schemas in our mind, what they're going to look like, and that's going to negatively impact us. So we developed this course in SWAT school. And it was called, it wasn't. It was another course that we incorporated in SWAT school. I taught this course with a couple guys, taught it for corporations. I taught it for civilians, different corporations, police, tactical, and SWAT people. So we came up with this idea of making them understand that what happens to your body under a stressful environment. So a lot of this comes from, if you haven't read this and you're into firearms at all, this is a great book. A lot of people know it. On Killing and on Combat. Different things happen to us under stress. If you've ever seen the end of any sports movie, what happens? The big game, the final championship game, the final move, the final at-bat slows down. Things slow down. Everyone's seen this. Things slow down, and there's no sound. Where does that come from? It comes from reality. Some people are going to say bullshit. When I try to explain this to people, and it's all science. Some of this is covered by, if anyone's never heard of Force Science Institute, they've got offices a lot of places. There is one in Chicago. I was able to go there. Also, Lieutenant Dave Grossman, in his book, talks about this phenomenon and how your brain. It's a survival mechanism, and I don't know everything about it, but different things happen to people under stress. So, and it's different. Different things happen to different people for different reasons. This is why when you think about, I talked about that girl, the first time you want to be in combat is not the first time, you want to be hit. You want to have those experiences, stress inoculation. This is why do boxers spar? This is why. Law enforcement has to figure out how to bridge that gap even more. They have done it with simulators and simunition rounds, which are like paintballs. So they do a good job. And that's we utilize that a lot to train people to see if they have what it takes and see if they can, head into the gunfire. So these psychological events that happen occur because of stress. Most people, if they've experienced this, most average, the lay person, it's because of car accidents. That moment that you know that you're going to get in a car accident, what happens? Slows down. Or if you've ever had a near miss where you reacted and you were able to avoid it quickly, those are these things. Your brain does amazing things. There's stories in Dave Grossman's book, and again, I've had a few happen to me. Most of the time, it's under extreme stress. So all the studies he does is police or military, mostly special operators, under life and death. A lot of times when people are robbed, an armed robbery, and they put the gun in the person's face, they might not be able to describe the person holding the gun. And the reason for that is heightened visual acuity. You don't need to know anything about guns, but guess what you do know? You know that big round hole comes out. So what happens? Their vision collapses on this, and it's like, oh, that's the danger area. What did he look like? This or that? I'm not sure. But he had a big gun. He had a very big gun. In his book, he talks about people, extreme situations. He says, before the gun went off, I saw the bullet. Come on. But there's many, I've never had that happen, but there's many people talking about this. People talk about hearing the springs collapse. They talk about slow motion, fast motion. Tachypsychia is a distortion in time. So very, very interesting stuff. This is important stuff to know because how are you going to react? If you haven't trained, if you haven't been in that environment, how are you going to react and be able to be successful? So we created this class, and what it was a series of targets, very realistic, colorful targets. And the targets were placed in different orders. The people entering knew that there wasn't anybody shooting back at them. These were just targets. We said, all we want you to do is come in, and if somebody is pointing a gun at you, we want you to shoot. That person is trying to kill you. Shoot that target. That's all we told them to do. What they didn't know was there was going to be some high stress involved. And we wanted to see how they reacted, and we wanted to prove a couple points to them. A couple classes, and on the SWAT level, it was way more involved than it was for citizens. A citizen couldn't handle the SWAT level of stress. But we were trying to mimic as much stress as we can. We may ask them, write these. We wouldn't tell them why. Write your wife's name down. Write your kid's name down. Write your dog's name down, or anything else we could come up with on these people. And throughout this, we may tell them that you have to say something. We may say every target we want you to do 2 to the body, 1 to the head, or something like that. So and nobody would do this correctly, because what they didn't know, as soon as they entered, it was high stress, yelling, screaming, pushing. We had a bottle sprayed with water. And we are trying to create environments that they're not going to know and to see how they react. Again, we could have made this a lot more stressful. But the purpose of the course was to get them to understand that there's events that you're not thinking about under stress and things that you're not seeing. Because here's an example. One room that they come in, there's 3 targets. The 2 in front, so you're talking proximity. That's really important, proximity. A male Hispanic and a male black. Both are in real aggressive clothes. The backgrounds of the targets are urban. They're real aggressive facial features, and they're both pointing like this. Off to the right is a female, very neutrally dressed, very plain looking, and she's holding a gun up. So your schema, your brain is always attempting to get shortcuts to, oh, I know what this is, I figured out. So if you walked in that room casually, you may be able to see her and shoot her, okay? What do you think happens when they come in? They see the urban, the aggressiveness, the distance, and then off to the side they see her. Even though we're talking about deadly force, we're talking about shooting. They shoot them and they never even see her. Now, what do you think? Those were male officers. And again, this is not scientific, anecdotal. What do you think the female officers did? You think they shot the female more? They did. They did. They shot the female more than the males. When we do this, our brain is always trying to do this. And again, this is under high stress. The next target, I remember, was an Arab guy. He's in the Arab drab, real aggressive, and he's like this. He's pointing out, he's got a banana. And I remember I had my son do this. With his little airsoft gun one day. He did this target. And he's saying, Dad, he's got to be a terrorist. He's probably got a suicide bomb. I got to look at the target. He's like, yeah, maybe I should have done 2 to the body, 1 to the head, but he might have had, look at the target. He's holding a banana. He finally says, he's holding a banana. Now we did this course so often, nobody believed us. They thought we were switching the targets. We had to start videotaping it because people were like, what? And it was high stress. Go. Which would what a SWAT environment would be. We were trying to mimic that. We would maybe have a number on the wall. Tell me what number you saw. I never saw it because their vision would collapse. Where's the threats? I remember we were doing one for a civilian class, and the order was, if they're pointing a gun at you, shoot them. Shoot them. There's a kid holding a gun. He's got a Wisconsin Badger sweatshirt on. He's holding the gun. Not real aggressive, but he's holding the gun up. And the guy, I said, why did you not shoot the kid? He's holding the gun. He says, my son goes to Wisconsin, and I knew he couldn't have been a threat. So these are the things that I think, even when, especially civilians, police officers too, when they're faced with threats, there's other factors that come into play. And this is the training, this is where it becomes so critical to understand, that there's other factors that under stress, you're going to think differently, you're going to act differently. And the old saying that you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your level of training. That's it. The quality of training as well. So this is why I said that general police officers and they don't get enough training. And they don't get enough training in a lot of areas. A lot of states are trying to mandate that. But the problem is to have that training and be able to, and I talked about this with the officers, you may be doing a dog call and you may have a hostage situation. And that's what the public doesn't understand. That the job is like this every day. You could be like this for days, and then it could be up here and it could be down. So that ability to be able to transition back and forth and be able to be successful is very different, very difficult. And when you add taking somebody's life, that's not an easy decision. It's extremely difficult. I think a lot of people don't realize the aftermath of that. A friend of mine said to me, it doesn't matter how good your shoot is lawfully. Is it ever going to make your life better? It's not. And the incidents that I've been involved in, none of those made my life better. And the guys that were involved with them, none of those made their life better. I mean, that one of the purposes of me coming here and talking to you is like these incidents they're complex, and you saw the emotion I had. You carry these on, and I think a lot of guys think that you're going to have these incidents and just be able to move on. You're not. You're going to bury it down sooner or later. Sooner or later those incidents are going to come out. Those incidents are going to come out. So, I think that, yes, law enforcement has to be trained enough. We have to avoid situations when we can, de-escalate when we can. But we also, when your life is put in danger, you have to do the right thing, and understand that those additional factors come into play and they may cloud your judgment. And that's everything. That's, biases, good and bad, and high quality criminals that are playing, they utilize those things to take you off your game. That's a lot of like, people do different things when they want to be violent. Like interdiction. Interdiction agents, they pull somebody over on the highway, they look at your carotid to see what your blood pressure is. They see this pumping, something's wrong. You could be as cool as possible. People do things. We're still human. Somebody that does this, or that's called a facial wipe. They might be ready to attack. They're putting on their war face, or people that do what they call a nasal wind dilation. They're oxygenating themselves before a fight. Those are the kind of things that officers need to train. Understand the science for science. They do a good job at understanding the metrics of breaking down, like how long does it take somebody that's not trained to pull a gun and shoot you, and it's like a quarter of a second. Those are the things the public doesn't understand. When the police are doing things and they're having you stand a certain way, or they're handcuffing you or taking you into position, there's a reason for that. It's for everyone's safety. So you had asked me that earlier. That's probably one of the biggest ones. We don't know who you are. We don't know who you are, and everyone wants to go home safe. So yeah, it may be inconvenient, it may be in handcuffs, but people don't like to go to jail, so they're going to lie.
You've worked 35 years in law enforcement.
Yep.
What would you say is the most important thing you've learned?
Trust your instincts. Train as much as you can. Treat people with respect. Be deadly when you have to. It's not often, but when you have to, be lawful, be deadly. And I don't say that callously or without some concern, but it's definitely true. Go home safe every day. Be good to people. Treat people. It's a great career. It's not for everybody, because there's a lot that comes with it. There's a lot of scrutiny tied into it. There's a lot of accountability, but it can also be, it can be the best career ever in every way possible. And my son's an auxiliary police officer. My wife's in law enforcement. I mentor and coach a lot of people to get involved, to get into law enforcement, to get promoted. I think it's the greatest profession out there.
All right. Patrick, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Wish you lots of luck. Thanks, man.
When I was designing the first Soft White Underbelly book, I realized that there were so many great portraits that weren't going to make it into that book. They just wouldn't fit. And once I saw how well that first book sold, I knew I'd have to design a second book. This second book is finally ready to ship. Like the first one, this book has a collection of some of the best portraits from Soft White Underbelly, accompanied by a quote from that person's interview. This book features another group of Rebecca portraits, as well as a collection of color images of the Whitaker family, and plenty of others. You can order yours for $125 or $150 for a signed copy at softwhiteunderbelly.org. Again, like the first book, once this book is sold out, I will not be printing more of them. The portraits are what Soft White Underbelly is all about, and these two books contain the best of all that work. Thank you for watching.